Hello everyone, JavaMentor.net here. Today let's learn about endpoints, let's learn about HTTP protocol. Okay, I just opened Amazon.com. So we can see here that if we click here all, we can search for computers, we can search for arts and crafts. There are plenty of other categories: men's fashion, girls fashion, and so on. This looks like an enum, if you remember. Okay, if we choose computers, we can again, there is a subcategory enum again. But if we click for monitors here, we receive all the monitors that we can buy on Amazon, right? We can click some filters here. And for example, if we click this, then we will get monitors only with that resolution, blah, blah, blah. Okay, how the backend of Amazon works. First of all, to say that the task of the backend is to provide the data. We can send the data to the frontend in some textual format like JSON, and then frontend will be responsible to present that data in a nice UI fashion, like you see here. Frontend code is executed in your browser, in my computer's browser, and backend code is executing on the server. So if we go here, I just created some JSON that backend is probably returning for those two elements, right? So we are returning name of that item, we are returning brand, what is the price, some attributes, and so on and so on. And then frontend will, from this data, it will create a nice UI like this. Okay, let's go back to the home page of the Amazon. So instead of computers and then monitors, we can try for printers, right? And we will receive printers. There are again some filters here. If we click one of the filters, we will receive only printers for that filter. And again, Amazon provides us some way to request for printers, and we will receive the data about printers. So maybe here we will have one of the fields in the filter, in the printer will be, I don't know, is in color. So is printer having all colors or just gray and white, or something like that. But for sure, printers will have a different fields than the monitor, right? Then maybe if you're trying to fetch some clothes for men's, for babies, let's say, so I don't know, diapering, and of course diapers will have a lot different fields than monitors. So let's try to list few of the endpoints that Amazon provide us. It's very important to say that first of all, user need to send a request to backend. So we are sending a request, which means we want to receive monitors and only HP monitors, right? So if we go to monitors, if we go here, or only monitors that has this refresh rate, and that data, what we want, this refresh rate, this brand, or something like that, that is a request. We are sending that to the server. Server is handling that request, and it's returning us a response with the data that we requested, right? So let's try to create one file listing all the requests and response that are available on the Amazon, right? So first request might be get the data about monitors. This is the request, and the response is monitors.json. So we are receiving some data in JSON format. There are some, let's say, optional filters like brand, or I don't know, refresh rate or something like that. Okay. The second endpoint is get the data about the printers. This is the request, and the response is printers, as you might imagine, printers.json. Then the third request is get the data about the man fashion, and the response is data about man shirts or something like that. Okay, you got the point. Now, all of those requests are, we want data. We are not changing anything. We are not inserting or updating the data on the Amazon. But Amazon must contain some endpoints like that. So someone add those articles on the website. So one of the endpoints must be insert the monitor to the Amazon, right? And as you can see, we don't need the response data. I mean, we are trying to save the data onto the Amazon. So probably we will be the one who will send this JSON through our request, so this data can be saved on the server. So most probably when we want to insert monitor to the Amazon, we need to send JSON with this request. Goes along with the request. And maybe the response is only if the save was successful or not successful. Successful or not successful, right? That would be a response. Okay, other than inserting the monitors, we can update the monitor. Again, we need to provide a new data through the JSON inside the request. And again, answer can be that a request was successful or it was not successful. And we can also do a delete the monitor. We'll probably need to send monitor ID in the request, so server know which monitor exactly to delete. Again, answer can be successful, not successful, and so on and so on. Okay, you can see that there are different operations that we can do through the endpoints, right? First operation is to get some data from the server. Another operation is to insert some data on the server, and other two operations are delete and update. Let's stick with those four operations for now. And also we can modify different resources. Resource number one is monitor, resource number two is printers, third resource is man fashion, and so on and so on. Let me introduce you a HTTP protocol. That is a protocol for communicating between frontend and backend. I mean, that's oversimplified definition, but I think it's good for now. So, what are backend and frontend communicating? Well, frontend is sending some requests, some commands to the backend, and backend is returning responses with the data or without the data, as we saw. With the data when we request some data, and when we want to update something, then the response is operation was successful and not successful. First of all things in the HTTP protocol is method. So there are, let me just list some methods. Those are the most popular. Get method is used when you want to retrieve data from the backend, from the server. Post method is meant when you want to insert the data to the server, the data that never existed before on that server. Put method is to update the data on the server, and delete method is for deleting the data from the server. So this is the method which is going inside the request. So every request must have a method. Request must have a URL. So where you're sending request? Well, we are sending to amazon.com/ and then best practice, I mean, how it's usually done is if you want the data about monitors, you go and say here amazon.com/monitors. If you want the data about printers, then you go and say amazon.com/printers here. So every request have a method and every request have a URL. Those two things are mandatory. And every response has a status code. That's the only thing that is mandatory in the response. And the status code is, was operation successful or not? 200 is has implication that request was done successfully, right? 500 is there is some error on the server. So this status code, this is a status code, 500, there is some error on the server. There are many other response codes, but let's just stick for those two for the simplicity. Okay, so let's say that we want to get the data about monitors, so that looks something like this. Get www.amazon.com/monitors, and then this is the request, right? And the response is monitors.json. And also we said that response must contain status code. So probably status is 200 here. So everything went fine. Take a note that this JSON in the response is not mandatory. So only things mandatory are in the request method and URL. In the response is status code. Okay, we want to pick printers, and let's say that something is wrong with Amazon servers. We will receive status equal 500. Okay, let's try this. Insert the monitor to the Amazon. So we will copy paste this, and now we are not getting the data, but we are trying to insert data, and that is a post operation. We are trying to add monitors, so it's something like this. And we want to pass JSON with the request. We will do that through the optional request body. And I will explain you everything in the next few tutorials. Don't be afraid that you're missing something here. We are just introducing the HTTP here and why do we need endpoints at all. Request body is monitor.json, and this monitor is the data about that monitor, right? And the result can be status, everything went fine, status equals to 200. Cool, and we can do the same for the update and deletes and so on. So here is a nice table about request and response, and let's just go through those two examples. So I will show you some optional things that we didn't talk about. So as we said, for the request, URL and method are mandatory. For the response, status code is mandatory. There are some optional parts both in request and response. Most obvious is response body. Actually, here it needs to be request body, and in the response is response body. Okay, so let's say that we want printers where model is HP and price is cheaper than 200, and we want a response in the XML format. So this is also a format similar to JSON, but we want the same data just in different format. So this is how our request should look like. Get, because we are getting the data. This is the URL, and then inside the URL with this question mark, you can add multiple request params which are optional. And usually when you want to pass those filters like HP or price, you're doing that through those request params. So we said here model equals to HP and price is equals to 200. Also, through the header, we are passing this filter, this command that we want the content type in the response to be in application XML format. Sometimes people are confused which parameters I need to go to pass through the URL using request params and which to pass through the header. Well, usually if something is related to, let's say, request and response related to the technology, that goes through the header usually. So this content type doesn't have any relation to printer, right? Content type can be sent for the diapers too. It's related about data, not about specific data printer, specific data monitor. And let's say this model equals to HP is related to printers. It can also be applied to monitors, but certainly cannot be applied to diapers. And that's exactly why you're passing those things here. So those are applicable for this resource. For example, you may want to get users that are let's say from the US, and for sure users don't have a price. So that means that price is applicable for printers but not for all resources. Okay, and when we send this request, the response is JSON data, and that is the response body, and we are getting status, and maybe we will receive some optional header like these printers are last modified at that time, something like that. Okay, another example is add new printer to the server. So through the request we go with the post method, which is mandatory, URL, which is mandatory, and also since we are adding the data, we will send the data about the new printer through the request body, which is optional. As you can see here in the get request, we didn't send JSON through the request body, but here in the post we are sending that. And response to this add new printer can be 200. And the last thing to mention is what can be the value of the status code. So basically everything that starts with 200 something, 201, 210 or something like that, basically a request was okay. So there were no problems. Everything that starts with 400 and 401, 414 or something like that, problem is on the client side. So server is fine, but client send a broken request. So the most popular 400 errors are 401 is when you are unauthorized. So you're trying, let's say, to get authors on some website, but you're not logged in, and only logged in persons can see authors. So you need to send token through the header, through the request header. So when you are unauthorized, 401 is the error. 403 is you are authorized, but that page is forbidden for you. For example, you are logged in as a regular user and you're trying to access some admin stuff. Also, probably the most known error is 404, page does not exist, and something like that. Okay, every status code that starts with 500, problem is on the server, and backend developers need to fix that. And for the end, why do we need HTTP? I already said that. That is a protocol that allows backend and frontend to communicate. So up until now, we created plenty of classes. We are doing something in Java, but no one outside of our application can retrieve the data from our application, and no one out of the application can send commands to our Java application. Now with this HTTP, that will be possible. That's it for this video. In the next video, let's play a little bit more with those requests and let's learn about Swagger. See you in the next video.